The issue with EV charging infrastructure is one that you've seen many times in the past, where there's an overemphasis on deployment and underemphasis on operations and how you maintain the system over time. So operator reported uptimes are 97 to 98%. That's actually a requirement in the laws that were put in place. But the actual charging success rate is averages around 71%. About a quarter of the time when you reach the charger, it doesn't start charging. And in many of those cases, you can't get that charger to charge your car at all. These are different measurements, and nobody confused them by accident. They're actually systemic. And it's not a technology failure. The chargers work, the infrastructure is there. It really is a systemic issue in that the operations and maintenance is not formulated in a sustainable way. These failure modes are concrete. They aren't vague. Most of them have nothing to do with the driver at all. 60% failed sessions, the charger is out of service. It's not a user error. You pull up to the charger, it's not working. Failure modes are many, as you would expect with a system like this. It's hardware. There's a software handshake. There's something wrong with the plug into your vehicle. There's a payment problem, a network issue. Any one of many of these things can fail, and the system is going to fail. And without a strong operator support and maintenance support, the system is bound to have problems. Very indicative. If you have a new station, it's 85% certain you're going to get a charge. By year 3, it's well below 70% chance on the same station. You have the 2022-24 deployment units. They're all into that bathtub curve now, and they're beginning to be more and more of an issue. And, if you look at some of the urban centers, say Seattle or LA, they're 25% failure rate, 24% failure rate. Whereas if you talk about the Southeast Central region, it's 7% failure rate. So they have a system where their operators and the maintenance is done, and other places it just hasn't been implemented. So these are the same national program. It's very wildly different outcomes. This is a structural, and it was baked in from the start. This incentive was to commission, not to put out, not to operate. There's a $5 billion spent in the NEVI program, and it was an infrastructure law to set up the infrastructure, work with the state DOTs. The DOTs were going to work with the operators. So they were grant milestones and the commission and connection. There wasn't really a structure in place to make sure that they were working 6 months later. The maintenance spec is a reimbursement list, not a performance metric. No spare parts, no statistical logging, no report structure back up the chain other than some very top level metrics. And those metrics tend to have a lot of caveats. If the equipment was knocked out by one thing or another, many of those modes, which are very common and expected modes, are actually discounted. They don't have to count them against their uptime. So the GAO reported in January of 25 that there was no performance maintenance framework at all. And Congress has gone ahead and funded another $148, almost $149 million to get the units that we paid to have installed, get them back up and running. This is not a way to create a sustainable network over time. So, and you have a year 5 cliff. After the year 5, essentially, they have no responsibility to keep keep operating the system. So after year 5, the unit's simply going to be hauled off and junked. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Again, this is a systemic problem that you see a lot. You have managers, say, often a T-type manager is very focused on one thing, that thing being, I need to get the units in commission so that I can get the reimbursement. And that's the focus, and they essentially shortchange anything else, maintenance, spare parts, some kind of system logging. All of that is put to the side. The incentive structure didn't require operations to be maintained, so they aren't maintained. You've seen them, right? These units, they're essentially a line of them set up someplace, maybe near a hotel or a restaurant on a highway, turnoff, and then they're just sitting there, right? There is no other structure around them, and so there's no operator there responsible. There's nobody making sure that they're up and there. You would not do this with a gas station, right? Why are you doing it with a charging center? Again, so the program ships. Your main metric is met. Walk away. The phone starts ringing, but in a lot of these cases, they're not really, they're not incentivized to really answer that phone, other than to take the message and try and figure out, how can I not count this against my downtime? So, this fails really in a very negative way, in that EVs should be a relatively reasonable type of transport that could be very inexpensive for people to use. But the places where they make a lot of sense and the vehicles could be more inexpensive in cities where batteries could be smaller and the charging infrastructure could be available so people can charge them pretty quickly and they don't mind about the fact that you have a 150-mile range. Here is where, in many cases, the system has fallen down the worst. One, that was phase 3 in the cities. All the initial focus was range anxiety, and they put them on the highways, and they put them on heavily trafficked, main routes, not in the city, not near the apartment buildings or the other places where there isn't a charging infrastructure where the person can charge their vehicle. They have to go to a charging station, and then those charging stations are very erratic as to their operation. They're also not all that common in those places. So this is, to some degree, you can call it an equity problem, and you're failing some of those who would probably put this in the strongest use, have the best use case for them. So it's self-defeating, it's self-sabotage as far as the use of the electric vehicle and the push to make them more available for people in the cities where they'll do very well. The gas station model was a reasonable model. There's no reason that you can't have a charging station which is more like a gas station. You pull up, you put your vehicle on charge, you walk over, use the restroom, get a snack, whatever, and then get back to your vehicle, and away you go. That way, the person in the station is then the operator or is an agent of the operator and can maintain the system. It's a fantastic model that is well proven, well liked, makes a lot of sense. So that is what needs to be done. There needs to be operator accountability, and those operators need to have an infrastructure that makes sense. This is a solvable problem. It's just the problem with the original specification of the program just completely discounted this as part of their model, and thus maintenance and operator responsibility was not baked in from the start. So infrastructure problems are always systemic. They're never totally technological, even if there's a technical issue. And there have been technical issues with infrastructure, but with charging infrastructure, but it's not that much of an issue. The hardware works, the overall system of payments and all the rest of it, all of that works. It's all available. It is much more to do with making sure the equipment is there, it's usable, it's maintained, and somebody can answer questions or figure out, oh, that unit has tripped off. I need to go get it back online immediately, not 10 hours later after the message makes its way up the chain and somebody drives out to the unit. So this is a matter where the units have been commissioned and then the operators have walked away. Not all operators do this. There are a lot of good operators out there. There's a lot of good infrastructure going in. But a lot of the infrastructure which was deployed kind of more maybe ad hoc and tried to kind of fill in the gaps has not been great and needs to be made part of an operator network that makes it more effective. So that's kind of my read on the situation with the EV charging. It's also to do with your range anxiety. It's always a matter of when can I get a charge? It's where's the next one? Is it going to be working when I get there, etc. Those are all issues that are addressed by some operators, but not by all operators by any means. And some companies have basically moved into the market and not really thought about these things at all, and they need to be. So that's my read as the unretired engineer. Hopefully gave you something to think about, and I will be back with other comments on engineering, EVs, systems, and my writing as in science fiction. Cheers. Bye.